It's the Blairing Out with Eric Blair show, and today we're here at the birth of a new supergroup, Dio Disciples, a band that is keeping the spirit of Ronnie James Dio alive. You know him as the former member of Judas Priest, Yngwie Malmsteen's Rising Force, and Iced Earth. Tim, Ripper, Owens.
Nice to be here, man.
Yeah.
Huh? Again. This is awesome. I love it.
The rest of the band members here today have said it's a bittersweet event. But, I mean, this must also be a blast and be exciting to go out there and rock out to these Dio songs.
Well, it is exciting. You know, it's funny. I've come and filled Rob Halford's shoes, and people say this is something totally different than that because I'm celebrating Ronnie James Dio. I'm not filling shoes. I'm not trying to be like Ronnie. We have two singers, Toby and myself, that are just celebrating Ronnie. Luckily, I'm doing it with friends. I was friends with Ronnie. That's the big difference of Ronnie and myself being friends, and Simon and Craig. You know, we've played together for years as well, and so it's exciting. It is rough going at times because of thinking of Ronnie and having, but you have this kind of aura around us, you know, and you just feel him, and to sing his songs. I mean, he's definitely the best singer ever.
Now, you did perform a couple of Black Sabbath songs and Dio songs with Hail Hail, correct?
I have. You know, we used to do we would open with Ace of Spades, actually, but we would do stand up and shout very early on in the set. Neon Nights we did. You know, I've played Neon Nights for years. Even in Beyond Fear, we would play Neon Nights, the song Neon Nights, and Children of the Sea a lot. So, yeah, I've been playing it, and you know, on my last solo tour I did, and with Yngwie, I did Gates of Babylon. Yeah. You know, so I've done them, and these guys. I remember Craig called me when we first were talking about this, and he's like, you know what, reservations. You know, you just got to do something without Ronnie, and it's gonna be really hard for Craig to do it. And he saw me do Gates of Babylon on a solo tour on YouTube, and he called me and said, dude, you're the man. It's going to be great. So, you know what? I've always sang Ronnie, or tried to sing Ronnie, and it's going to be fun.
Now, Ronnie was actually a friend of yours.
He was a friend of mine, and you know, I think Ronnie was a friend of everybody's, though, right? I mean, you know, he's one of those guys that you say, I was friends with him, and you know what I would say on stage all the time is, you know, this is Ronnie James Dio. It's my friend. He was a friend of mine, and he was also a friend of yours. Because he knew everybody's name. He could probably go in the crowd and point out, there's Bob, Rick, Jenny, right? I mean, he knew it. Like that. And he was a friend, and he admired my voice, always said in print that I was one of his favorite singers that was out there now. So it was, to me, I learned a lot from Ronnie as a vocalist, but also as a person, how he treated everybody around him. You know, Ronnie was the last person to leave venues until everybody was happy. So it was nice, but just to be around him and you know, to share some Vindaloo, Indian Vindaloo in Birmingham, England, and share it in L.A. and you know, just share, you know, things with him. I'm definitely one of the blessed people. What
was your first emotion when you heard about Ronnie's passing, and how did you hear about
it? You know what? You talk about emotions. You know, I have a restaurant in my hometown. I don't think I was part owner of it then, but I actually played an acoustic show the night before, and I always, in my acoustic shows, I always played Man of Silver Mountain, Neon Nights, not acoustic, but I always played Neon Nights, Man of Silver Mountain. There was a great video that came out I left the show, went home, and I got a call, hey, I heard Ronnie James Dio passed away. Now, this was the first one that came out that wasn't true yet, and then the next morning he passed, but I was floored. And the next day, it was just, I mean, the emotions just came out. And I went to the restaurant and just played his music, you know, called in Eddie Trunk, and we just sat in the back room and just played it. And, you know, it was very emotional. And you know, to me, I was lucky because that night I said, this is Ronnie James Dio, you know, whatever. It's on YouTube now, but my favorite singer is Man of Silver Mountain. And people thought that I did this after he passed, but it was the night before, and it was my tradition on Children of the Sea. I always played Unplugged, and that was what I did. And you know, that, I'll tell you what, that hit hard.
And we saw that he just fought this thing called cancer. He really fought it, and in fact, he even made an appearance at the Golden God Awards just a few days before he passed.
You know, it's hard for me actually to watch that, to see it, and you just see it there, and You know, it was always, we think he's getting better, and, you know, Wendy's been my manager now since 2000. Wendy Dio's been my manager since 2005, I think. You know, I never really asked her about it, but, you know, when we would talk, it's like, well, you know, he's doing better, and so, you know, it just came out of the you know, a shocker, like it did to everybody, you know. And it's one of the, you know, it's a shame, and like Wendy says, listen, go get checked. You know, when I opened this restaurant up after that, RIPPER Owens Tap House in Akron, she came for the relaunch, and we had a benefit, and it all went to the Stand Up and Shout Cancer Fund, and we still raised money for that. And she flew in for it, and we auctioned all of us off to people out in the crowd, and it's a small restaurant, 150 seats. And she said, everybody get checked. You know, everybody get checked. And that's what she says, you know, you guys are sick. If Ronnie would have gotten checked earlier, if he would have went and gotten checked, and he could have maybe beat it. She's so passionate about that, about making sure, because Ronnie could have possibly beat this, and she's very passionate about the Cancer Foundation and making, you know, raising money for it.
Now, do you think that some of the proceeds from your tours will go to the Stand Up and Shout Cancer Fund?
I don't know anything about that. I know that it's a different entity. You know, we're trying to make sure that Dio Disciples isn't the Cancer Foundation. It's not, you know, Stand Up and Shout is a totally different thing. This is a celebration of Ronnie. We're going out, and you know, I emptied my schedule. I was a pretty busy guy, and I emptied it all until November, making sure that it was emptied for this to go celebrate Ronnie James Dio.
It's going to be good, and I think a lot of the bands that you're going to be playing with at festivals are really going to feel this.
I think there's any doubt they'll feel it. And the reason why, I'm not Ronnie James Dio. I don't sound like Ronnie James Dio. I'm a whole different person. Toby's a whole different singer, a whole different person. We're not trying to be Ronnie James Dio, but we're with Ronnie's band. So, and these stories we talk about every night. We sat around with a barbecue the other night, Simon and Craig and Scott and I, and just to hear these stories, and it's just like, wow, you know, I mean, so I think that's what people will feel. They will know that, listen, they're not a tribute band. They're not trying to carry on and be this. They're celebrating it. Look at them.
As a kid, what were the lyrics, Ronnie James Dio lyrics, that moved you? You know, it's probably the mid '80s though. You know, really when it really started kicking in, from early '80s, mid '80s. You know, Holy Diver, obviously. I mean, Holy Diver was it, right? I mean, to me, and then I really went back and really got hooked on the Man of Silver Mountain, and I still get hooked even more now. Every day I learn something new from him. But it was probably the Holy Diver CD. You know, I mean, I was always, you know, whether we were joking or not joking, we were always slaying a dragon or something back then. You know, because you had the video and he's, but you know, it was the whole record. It wasn't even a song. Well, I talked to Dio, and I would always talk to him about, you know, there are life lessons in your music if people will listen to it. I mean, during the 80s, there were so many Christian anti-rock seminars, and I think they really missed the point of what Ronnie was telling people. Oh, yes, of course they did. I mean, they missed they looked for the bad and all good, really, and in hard rock it was always that, you know. And you know, but Ronnie was great with it all anyways. You know, he just went on and you know, one of the best well-spoken singers and musicians, and love to hear him talk. And you know, the first time I met him was in '97, and I just finished Jugulator. And Ronnie, I went to watch Dio and Maiden in my hometown, and he made sure that he said, "Listen, Ripper Owens is going to give him these laminates and get him back. I want to meet him." It's like, you're kidding me, you know? And I went back and I said, Ronnie, you know, I idolized you, and I'll never forget an interview because he was like, I write my songs while I watch sporting events on the television, and I will, you know, and I told him this, and he said, listen, you're one of us now. You're just like me. And when he said that, but all I kept thinking about was, this is the guy that I remember listening to on it, because back then I recorded probably an interview on the radio that he wrote music while he was watching sporting events on the television. And I told him this, and he just laughed, and he did. He spoke, and just to hear him, I could, you know, it's funny, two of my favorite singers I love hearing speak, Rob Halford and Ronnie James Dio, and I love to hear them speak. So it was always like, they've always sounded exactly the same. They never became a philosopher. You know, so many people become philosophers, and they start telling these stories, and
he just spoke from the heart, and Halford the same way, and he kind of was. It's funny that they both, and I've sang both of them now.
A lot of people ask me, because I when we watch the movie Rockstar, I always go, that's movies about Ripper Owens, essentially, loosely based.
Loosely based.
Now, how much involved were you in that movie getting made, and do you have ownership in it?
No, none. You know what happened was there was an article in the New York Times about me, and they bought the rights to it, and they were going to make it, and it was going to be called Metal Gods, and they were going to do it about me. And we were involved, going to have some songs in it, but they didn't creatively. They didn't want us involved. The band didn't like how it started to go. So the band said, "Listen, creativity. We want to have some creativity in this movie, some input." And they said, "Absolutely zero." So at that point is when we pulled out of it, and then they made then they kind of went off and made their own movie. But they had the similarities. Obviously, there was those similarities at the beginning. Tribute singer makes the band, sings one line of a song, but it really was. It went off in its own world, and so we had nothing, no money, no nothing from it once we did that.
Now, Ripper, I would think for a kid that's been playing in a Judas Priest cover band for years, that getting this opportunity to audition for this band and then to go on tour with them would be ominous and imposing. How did you deal with that?
Well, it wasn't. You know what? I was well prepared. I could sing the stuff. It was. The guys, we became great friends right from the start, and still are to this day, and so it made it better. I mean, I was very well prepared. I went on that stage the first night and was like, you know what, they're gonna not want me, but I feel good that I'm gonna sing the stuff. And even at the end of the day, whether they didn't want me there or not, there's no one that can argue that I couldn't sing the stuff. Mm-hmm. But I was prepared, and I was fine with it. I knew it was me. It fit me, and I could sing it. And like I said, I think also having the friendship with the guys and being around them and doing everything together, it made it easier.
What kind of things did you learn from Glenn Tipton and KK Downing?
Well, the same kind of things that you see with Ronnie. I learned that, treat the fans good. We always signed autographs. We had the meet and greets, and we would sign autographs at the bus. And, they always treated my family good and me good, and we did everything together. And we're a unit, and I learned that. Definitely learned that from him.
Now, at the point that you're, you've done Iced Earth, which was amazing, but at the point that you join Yngwie Malmsteen's Rising Force, you're a veteran already.
Yeah.
You're known, you're famous. What was it like working with Yngwie? Because there's so many stories that he's hard to work with.
Well, we're planning on hopefully doing a tour this year. I might tour them in October, November. So. I have a blast with Yngwie. And what's funny is you say that I am a veteran now, and he treats me like a veteran and lets me do my thing, and in the studio, let me do my thing. And you know what? I have a really good time with him. Good. I really have a good time with him. He's a funny guy. I mean, listen, people. I'm not saying none of the stories aren't true in the past. I don't know what's happened in the past. I don't know what goes on with anybody else. I know how Yngwie and myself are to each other. And it's great. We get along. We actually hang out quite a bit when we're touring as well. We'll go to the mall. It's kind of funny going to the mall with Yngwie. He's a giant, 8 feet tall, and but we go to the movies and do stuff, and we get along really well. So it's funny. It's funny you said the veteran thing, because he treats me like a veteran.
Now, briefly, what are your hopes and dreams for Dio Disciples?
Well, right now it's just ending this interview. No, right now I'm joking with you. I'm joking.
Yeah, no, me too.
Right now we're going one step at a time. Mm-hmm. We have Europe planned. Actually, this is a great interview, by the way. So this is the best interview of the day. Right now we're just taking each step at a time. We plan the European tour because of the festivals there. We're planning an American tour, hopefully around September or something. So we're just, we're going each step, and we're enjoying the rehearsals now, and we can't wait to start the tour. I mean, this is, like I said, it's all about celebrating Ronnie's music, and I get to celebrate it with Simon and the guys, and it's going to be a lot of fun.
All right. Well, Tim Ripper Owens, thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Blairing Out with Eric Blair Show with Tim Ripper Owens, signing off.
Blairing Out Show.